The year 2045 had arrived with promises that seemed pulled from the pages of science fiction. In the coastal metropolis of Neo-Ha Long, towering glass spires reached toward the clouds, while below, in the shadows of progress, sprawling low-tech shanty towns hugged the waterfront. This was the world of the nanogen era, a time when nanotechnology had evolved to the point of directly interfacing with human DNA. Lynn pulled her delivery scooter to a stop outside the gleaming nanogen complex, its facade reflecting the late afternoon sun like a mirror of the future. At 25, she had spent 3 years navigating the congested streets of Neo-Ha Long as a courier, her modest salary barely covering the cost of her tiny apartment in one of the city's transitional neighborhoods. The package strapped to the back of her scooter was sealed in a temperature-controlled case, marked with biohazard symbols and warnings in multiple languages. "Another medical delivery," she muttered to herself, checking the encryption code on her tablet. The recipient was listed as Laboratory 7X, which was unusual. Most deliveries went to named researchers or department heads. Lynn had learned not to ask too many questions about the packages she carried. In a world where genetic modification had become commonplace, discretion was more valuable than curiosity. As she maneuvered through the building's security checkpoints, her reflection caught in the polished steel of the scanner. Ordinary brown eyes, black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the lean build of someone who spent their days on a motorcycle dodging traffic. Nothing about her suggested that in a matter of hours she would become the center of a debate that would reshape humanity's understanding of itself. The elevator whisked her to the 7th floor, where the sterile corridors hummed with the quiet efficiency of cutting-edge research. Laboratory 7X turned out to be a restricted access wing, with additional security measures. After verifying her credentials for the 3rd time, Lynn was directed to leave the package with a researcher who barely looked up from his tablet as he signed for it. "Test subject designation N247, he murmured, scanning the case's barcode. "Another batch for the extreme enhancement trials." The words meant nothing to Lynn, but something in his tone made her pause. There was tension in the air, the kind that preceded big announcements or big disasters. The ride back down proved eventful in ways Lynn couldn't have imagined. As the elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, a group of arguing scientists stepped in, their conversation intense and heated. "The neural enhancement matrix isn't stable enough for human trials," a woman in a lab coat was insisting. "The nano-DNA integration rate is only 60%, and we're seeing rejection responses in the cellular reconstruction phase." "Dr. Duong, we're under pressure from the board," replied a tall man with silver temples. "The Prometheus protocol needs to be ready for the next funding cycle. If we don't show results soon, they'll pull the plug." Lynn pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible as the conversation continued. The woman, Dr. Duong, shook her head firmly. "I won't compromise safety protocols. We've seen what happens when nano-enhancement goes wrong. Subject N246 developed neural feedback loops that nearly caused complete synaptic failure." "That's exactly why we need N247, the man insisted. "The black nano-DNA strain shows unprecedented stability. Initial simulations suggest it could provide enhancement without the usual cellular rejection." The elevator reached the ground floor, and the scientists filed out, still debating. Lynn caught a fragment of their parting words. "If this sample gets out before we're ready, it could be catastrophic." 20 minutes later, Lynn was cruising through the dense traffic of the Harbor District when it happened. A delivery truck ran a red light, forcing her to swerve hard to the right. Her scooter hit a pothole, and she felt the rear cargo compartment strike the curb. The sound of breaking glass made her heart sink. She pulled over and dismounted, dreading what she would find. The temperature-controlled case had split along its seam, revealing a shattered vial inside. A small puddle of black liquid, almost like liquid metal, was seeping from the container. As Lynn bent down to assess the damage, she scraped her hand on a jagged piece of the case. The pain was sharp but brief. What followed was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The black substance seemed to pulse where it had made contact with her blood, and she watched in horrified fascination as it appeared to absorb into her skin. Within seconds, there was no trace of the spill, except for the empty vial. Lynn stared at her hand, but aside from the small cut, everything looked normal. She felt normal. Maybe the substance had been inert, she told herself. Maybe it was just sophisticated medical polymer, or some kind of diagnostic gel. But even as she cleaned up the broken glass and reported the incident to dispatch, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. That evening, in her small apartment, overlooking the harbor, Lynn discovered she was right. She had been reaching for a book on the top shelf when her hand simply punched through the wooden shelf, sending books cascading to the floor. Staring at her fist buried knuckle-deep in solid wood, she felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Over the next few days, the changes became impossible to ignore. Her vision sharpened until she could read street signs, blocks away. Her reflexes quickened, to the point where catching falling objects became almost automatic. Most remarkably, she felt an awareness of the world around her that bordered on supernatural. She could sense people approaching from behind, feel the electromagnetic signatures of electronic devices, and even detect structural weaknesses in buildings as she passed by. The discovery of her enhanced state coincided with increasingly frantic news reports about a missing experimental sample from Nanogen. The company had launched what they called a comprehensive recovery operation, which involved teams of investigators canvassing the city. Lynn quickly realized that she was likely the subject of their search. It was during one of Nanogen's press conferences that she first saw Tien. The young engineer appeared on screen as an expert commentator, but his message diverged sharply from the company line. "The public has a right to know what Nanogen is developing," he stated, facing down an increasingly hostile interviewer. "Genetic enhancement technology should not be controlled by private corporations. The potential for abuse is enormous, and the lack of transparency is deeply troubling." Intrigued by his perspective, Lynn managed to track down his contact information through social media. When they met at a small cafe in the Arts District, she found herself face to face with someone who shared her growing concerns about the implications of what had happened to her. Tien was in his early 30s with the precise demeanor of someone who had spent years working with complex systems. His eyes held the wariness of a person who had seen too much of corporate machinations. "You said on the phone that you had information about Nanogen's research." He began glancing around the cafe to ensure they weren't being observed. "What kind of information?" Lynn took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. She told him about the delivery of the accident and the changes she had been experiencing. To demonstrate, she quietly bent a steel spoon into a perfect spiral under the table. Tien's eyes widened. "You're the missing sample. You're why they're turning the city upside down." "I didn't ask for this," Lynn said quietly. "But now that it's happened, I need to understand what I've become, and I need to know what Nanogen plans to do about it." "There's someone you need to meet," Tien said, after a long pause. "Dr. Duong used to work for Nanogen. She left 6 months ago when she discovered what they were really doing with the nano-DNA research. Dr. Duong ran a small, independent medical clinic in one of Neo Ha Long's most diverse neighborhoods. When Lin and Tien arrived the next evening, they found a woman in her 40s, whose gentle demeanor masked a sharp intelligence and unwavering ethical compass. "So you're the one," Dr. Duong said after examining Lin thoroughly. "Subject N247. I helped develop the nano-DNA strain that's now integrated with your cellular structure." "You created this?" Lin asked, gesturing to herself. "I helped refine the delivery mechanism," Dr. Duong corrected. "But I left the project when I realized how Nanogen intended to use it. They weren't interested in medical applications or genetic therapy. They wanted to create enhanced soldiers, enhanced workers, enhanced slaves." She led them to her computer, bringing up a series of complex molecular diagrams. "What you received was our most advanced formula nanomachines, that can rewrite genetic code in real time, adapting and optimizing based on environmental needs. In theory, it should make you stronger, faster, more resilient, and more intelligent without the cellular rejection we saw in previous subjects. Should, Lin asked. The integration appears to be successful, but we never completed long-term testing. You're not just enhanced, you're the first viable human nanohybrid. Tian leaned forward. What does that mean for the future if Nanogen perfects this technology? They could fundamentally alter what it means to be human, Dr. Duong finished. And they could control who gets access to that alteration. As if summoned by their conversation, the news that evening reported Nanogen's announcement of a major breakthrough in genetic enhancement. The company's CEO, Dr. Vuong, held a press conference to unveil plans for the Human Optimization Initiative. We stand at the threshold of a new era, Dr. Vuong declared to the assembled media. Genetic limitations that have constrained humanity for millennia are about to become obsolete. Nanogen will lead the transition to Humanity 2.0. The announcement sparked intense debate across every platform and medium. Ethicists warned of a future divided between enhanced and unenhanced humans. Religious leaders questioned the morality of rewriting divine creation. Politicians scrambled to craft regulatory frameworks for a technology that seemed to evolve faster than laws could be written. In the midst of this chaos, Lin found herself struggling with the weight of what she had become. The enhancements brought unexpected challenges. She had to learn to control her strength, to avoid breaking everyday objects, to filter the overwhelming sensory input that threatened to flood her consciousness, and to manage the nanomachines themselves, which seemed to respond to her emotional state. One evening, as she practiced controlling her abilities in an abandoned warehouse that Tian had found, Dr. Duong approached her with news that changed everything. "I've been analyzing your blood samples," she began. "The nano-DNA integration isn't just stable, it's evolving. The nanobots are learning from your biology, optimizing themselves, becoming more efficient." "Is that good or bad?" Lin asked. "It means you're not just enhanced. You're becoming something genuinely new. And if I'm right about the data patterns I'm seeing, you might be the key to safely enhancing others without the rejection responses that killed earlier subjects." The implications were staggering. If Lin's nano-integration could be replicated safely, it could mean the democratization of human enhancement. But it also made her an invaluable asset to anyone seeking to control such technology. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hidden training, clandestine meetings, and growing awareness that Nanogen was closing in on them. Tian had established a network of contacts within the company who fed him information about the search efforts. Dr. Duong worked tirelessly to understand the mechanism by which Lin's enhancements functioned, hoping to develop a solution that could be shared openly rather than controlled by corporate interests. It was during this period that Lin met Mai, an investigative journalist, who had been tracking Nanogen's activities for months. Mai had uncovered evidence of illegal human experimentation, corporate espionage, and connections to military contracts that raised serious questions about the company's ultimate goals. "The public needs to know what's really happening," Mai insisted during one of their meetings. "Nanogen is trying to control the narrative, making themselves look like saviors of humanity. But the truth is much darker." Together, the group began planning a way to expose Nanogen's activities and ensure that the technology Lin represented couldn't be monopolized. But their plans accelerated dramatically when Tian brought news that Dr. Vuong had called for an international conference on human enhancement. "It's called Refining Humanity," Tian explained. "Representatives from governments, corporations, and research institutions around the world. He's planning to announce something big." Dr. Duong frowned. "He's going to try to demonstrate the technology publicly. Make it seem like Nanogen has everything under control. And if he succeeds," Mai added, "he'll shape public opinion before anyone can raise questions about safety or ethics." Lin looked at her hands, watching, as faint blue light flickered along her fingertips, a manifestation of the nanomachines responding to her emotional state. "Then, we need to make sure he doesn't succeed." The plan they developed was audacious in its simplicity. Lin would attend the conference as herself, not hiding her identity, but presenting as someone who had experienced nano-enhancement firsthand. She would challenge Dr. Vuong's narrative, directly demonstrating both the potential and the risks of the technology. The conference was held in Nanogen's largest auditorium, with hundreds of attendees and a live global broadcast. As Lin entered the building, she felt the nano-machines in her system respond to the electromagnetic fields of the security scanners. For a moment, she worried they might detect her enhancements, but the technology passed her through without incident. Dr. Vuong took the stage to thunderous applause, his presentation smooth and polished. He spoke of a future where genetic diseases were eliminated, where human potential was unleashed, where the boundaries of mortality itself might be transcended. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced as his presentation reached its climax, "Nanogen has successfully created the first stable human nano-integration. Our test subject has shown unprecedented enhancement across all measured parameters with no adverse effects." That was Lin's cue. She stood up in the audience, and as she did, she allowed the nanomachines to respond fully to her intentions. Her eyes began to glow with that characteristic blue light, and the air around her seemed to shimmer with energy. "I am that test subject," she said, her voice carrying clearly throughout the auditorium without any amplification. "And I'm here to tell you the truth about what Nanogen has done." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Security personnel moved toward her, but Lin's enhanced reflexes and strength made her effectively unstoppable. She leaped onto the stage in a single bound, landing gracefully next to Dr. Vuong's podium. "What you see before you," she continued, addressing the cameras directly, "is the result of an unauthorized experiment. I was never a volunteer. This technology was forced upon me through an accident that Nanogen has tried to cover up." Dr. Vuong attempted to regain control of the situation. "This is a delusional individual who can do this?" Lin interrupted, placing her hand on the metal podium. The audience watched in amazement as she crumpled it like paper, then reformed it into its original shape. "I'm not here to destroy or threaten. I'm here to show you what this technology really means." But Dr. Vuong wasn't finished. "If you're truly our test subject, then you're also our property. You contain billions of dollars of research and development. You will return to our custody immediately." "I'm not your property," Lin replied firmly. "I'm a human being who has been transformed by your technology, and I'm here to make sure that what happened to me happens safely, ethically, and with full consent for others." The confrontation escalated as Dr. Vuong activated what he called containment protocols. The auditorium's security systems engaged, and to everyone's horror, swarms of mechanical nanobots began emerging from hidden panels in the walls and ceiling. "You forget," Dr. Vuong said with cold satisfaction, "that we built the nanobots inside you. We have ways of controlling them." The nanoswarm converged on Lin, and for a moment it seemed she would be overwhelmed. But something unexpected happened. The nanomachines in her system didn't respond to Nanogen's control signals. Instead, they interfaced with the attacking nanobots, and Lin felt her consciousness expand to encompass the entire swarm. "You built the first generation," she said, her voice now carrying an otherworldly resonance as she controlled hundreds of thousands of nanobots simultaneously. "But what you put in me has evolved beyond your programming." The confrontation became a battle of wills and technology, with Lin using her integrated nanobots to defend against and ultimately reprogram the attacking swarm. The audience watched in stunned silence as she demonstrated a level of control over nanotechnology that no one had thought possible. But the real climax came when Dr. Vuong, watching from the audience, stood up with her tablet and announced, "I'm uploading the complete Nanogen research files to public servers worldwide. Everyone will now have access to the data needed to understand and safely replicate this technology." Dr. Vuong tried to stop the upload, but Tien and his network of contacts within Nanogen had prepared for this moment. Across the company's systems, firewalls fell, and classified files became public domain. As the dust settled, Lynn found herself at the center of a transformed world. The nanoswarm, now under her control, dispersed harmlessly. The conference continued, but now it was a genuine dialogue about the future of human enhancement, rather than a corporate presentation. In the days that followed, Nanogen's stock price collapsed. Government investigations began across multiple countries. Dr. Vuong was arrested on charges of illegal human experimentation and corporate fraud. But more importantly, the technology was now in the public domain, available to researchers worldwide who could work on making it safe and accessible. Dr. Duong established an international coalition of researchers dedicated to ethical enhancement technology. Tien founded a non-profit organization focused on democratizing access to genetic improvements. Mai's reporting won international prizes and helped shape public policy around human enhancement. Lin became the face of responsible enhancement technology, traveling the world to speak at universities, research institutions, and government bodies. She worked with researchers to understand how her nano-integration could be safely replicated, helping to develop protocols that prevented the cellular rejection that had killed earlier subjects. But perhaps most importantly, she helped establish the principle that enhancement technology should enhance humanity as a whole, not create a new class divide between the enhanced and unenhanced. The blue glow in her eyes became a symbol of hope rather than fear, representing the possibility of human potential, unleashed responsibly and ethically. In interviews, she often spoke about the responsibility that came with great power, and how the greatest enhancement of all was the expansion of human compassion and wisdom. As the years passed, Lin's nano-integration continued to evolve, but always in ways that seemed to prioritize balance and stability over raw power. Scientists theorized that the technology had somehow become attuned to her ethical framework, evolving to embody her values of service and protection. The world of 2047 was dramatically different from that of 2045. Enhancement technology was regulated, accessible, and constantly improving. Lin's example had shown that the goal wasn't to create superhumans who stood apart from humanity, but to help all humans transcend their limitations while retaining their essential humanity. Standing on the stage of the Global Enhancement Ethics Conference 2 years after that first dramatic revelation, Lin looked out at an audience that included enhanced and unenhanced humans working together toward a common future. Her eyes still glowed with that gentle blue light, but now it was joined by the subtle luminescence of hundreds of others who had successfully integrated nano-enhancement technology. "The future we build," she said, concluding her keynote address, "will be defined not by how much we can change ourselves, but by how much we can change the world for the better." Enhancement technology doesn't make us more than human. It makes us more ourselves. The applause that followed was not just for her words, but for a future that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. As she left the stage, Lin felt the nanomachines in her system pulse with contentment. They had found their purpose not in creating a superhuman, but in helping humanity discover its best self. In the end, the story of Lin and the nano-DNA wasn't just about technological transformation. It was about the choices humans make when faced with the power to redefine themselves. It was about the courage to stand up for principles, even when the stakes are impossibly high. And it was about the recognition that true strength lies not in what we can destroy, but in what we can protect and create. The technology that had accidentally transformed one delivery driver had ultimately transformed the world's understanding of human potential. And in that transformation, humanity had learned perhaps its most important lesson, that the greatest enhancement of all was the expansion of wisdom, compassion, and the determination to use power responsibly. As the sun set over Neo Ha Long, its light reflecting off both the high-tech towers and the humble neighborhoods below, Lin returned to her apartment. But now, it was just one of many homes she kept around the world as her work took her everywhere. There were people seeking to understand and improve the human condition. She settled by her window, looking out at the harbor where her journey had really begun. Her reflection in the glass showed those distinctive blue eyes, but more than that, it showed someone who had found purpose in the most unexpected circumstances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help guide humanity's next evolutionary step. But tonight, she was content to be exactly what she had become, not a superhuman, but a human who had found ways to use extraordinary abilities in service of ordinary human needs, love, security, hope, and the chance for everyone to become the best version of themselves. The nanobots in her system pulsed gently, a heartbeat of technology and biology in perfect harmony. Outside, the lights of the city twinkled like stars, each one representing a life that might be touched by the technology she had helped to democratize and make safe. In the distance, she could see the old Nanogen building, now converted into a research center, dedicated to open-source enhancement technologies. It stood as a symbol of transformation, not just of human potential, but of human systems, human priorities, and human values. Lynn smiled her enhanced vision, allowing her to see clearly to the horizon, where the sea met the sky. Somewhere out there was a future full of possibilities, challenges, and opportunities to continue growing, not just in power, but in wisdom, compassion, and understanding. The story that had begun with an accidental spill of nano-DNA had become something far greater, a testament to the human capacity for growth, adaptation, and ethical evolution. And as she prepared for sleep, Lynn knew that this was only the beginning of a much larger story, the story of humanity's next chapter, written not by corporations or governments, but by ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things with the tools they were given. In her dreams that night, she saw a world where enhancement wasn't about becoming superhuman, but about helping everyone access their full human potential. A world where technology served humanity rather than controlling it. A world where the blue glow in her eyes had become a symbol not of what made her different, but of what made all humans capable of transcending their limitations while never losing sight of their values. And in the morning, she would wake ready to continue building that world, one conversation, one demonstration, one ethical choice at a time. Because in the end, the greatest enhancement of all was the expanded capacity to care, to hope, and to work toward a future worthy of the best in human nature. The nano-DNA had rewritten more than her genetic code. It had rewritten the story of what it meant to be human in an age of unlimited technological possibility. And that story, Lynn knew, was just beginning to be told.